Hey, what's up everybody? In this lesson, we're going to learn the very basics of Adobe Premiere Pro. We're going to work together to go through a series of found footage that I've provided to you for the class, and we're going to look at the different ways that we can edit and use some of the basic tools and some of the magic Adobe tools here in Premiere. When you open up Premiere Pro, you're going to be greeted with this main screen in which you can create a new project or open a project. Premiere Pro is going to save your project to your local drive. Just be aware of that. When working with video, I recommend that you put your files on your desktop or on your hard drive rather than work off of an external drive or a jump drive or something of that nature. This is going to allow things to work a little more smoothly for you as you develop your project. In this lesson, I'm going to use a series of footage, and I want you to just follow along with me. Put the footage together the way I did in the video and export your final product. There's not going to be a lot of customization on this one particularly, mainly because we're just dipping our toes in the Premiere Pro waters. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to create a new project. When I create a new project, I'm greeted with this often scary type of window. Only thing I really want you to change here is your project name. We're going to call this Skate. Then pick a project location in which you can easily find your clip. I like to go to the drop down and choose location. And then you'll see it puts it in your apps here. I'm on a Mac. I want to go ahead and just put this in a file where I can find it. Those are the only two things I change. The next thing is I want to go over to my import settings and just make sure all of these little levers are turned off. I don't want to create a new sequence. If that was turned on, it would look like that, but I want to turn them off, make them gray. This essentially is a finder window where you can go through and find different footage that you're going to work for. Some people like to use this. I personally like to pull my footage in a different way. So I'm not going to select anything in here. I'm going to just go to the word create and hit create. When I do that, it automatically makes a project file for me that will autosave, which is really, really nice. Now we have our workspace. To think about any Adobe app, and we probably know this by now in this course, but we want to always reset our workspace. I'm going to go to Window, Workspaces, and I want to select Essentials for this assignment. We're going to go Reset to Save Layout, and that's going to give you the same window arrangement as me. Alternatively, you can also go to the panel here on the top right. You can select and reset your different essentials. There's a vertical workspace, that's a really great workspace. Text, so many fun ones. We're going to stick to essentials. What do all these windows mean? Well, your project window is essentially where you're going to keep all of your files, all of the assets, and it's going to reference those assets from their specific folder. What do I mean by that? Well, if you have an asset on your desktop and you pull it in here, which I'll show you in a few seconds, and you import it, if later on you come back and move that asset off of your desktop, the link or the path will not be connected. That footage will no longer show up in Premiere Pro and it will ask you to reconnect it. This is one of the biggest issues typically new users of Premiere Pro have, is they end up moving their files and the links do not work anymore. We want to make sure that we keep everything in one cohesive space. The next thing I'm going to do here is create something called a bin. A bin is just a fancy word for a folder. And I'm going to click the bin button and we're going to name this footage. I'm going to then create another bin and we're going to call this music. I'm going to create a third bin and we're going to call this voiceover. Right now, my folders are large icons. I do recommend you use the list view here at the bottom just so you can see a little bit more of the folder structure as you go, especially if you're a beginner. The next step is we need to get footage in. We can do that a few different ways. I can go ahead and select my footage, for instance, my interview clips, and I can drag them into a particular folder. Now they're nicely snug in that voiceover folder. I can also double click in the gray area and I can go ahead and choose my other files. If I do that, let me highlight a few of them here for you. I can go ahead and I can't drag them in anymore, but I can hit import. The only thing here is you'll need to remember to move them by holding your left mouse button into your footage folder. Finally, we're going to just double click and add that lonely music clip. I always like to drag, that's my favorite way, but we'll just add that and put it in the music folder, and now all of our clips are ready to go. I am going to add one more folder. This folder is going to be called Sequences. A sequence is essentially something we're going to create with our footage and our timeline. I always like to create sequences from a file, which I'm going to show you. This is the easiest way to kind of get started in Premiere. Remember, this lesson is not about like intermediate or advanced uses of Premiere Pro. This is about the bare basics. Go ahead, follow along with me, go through the processes, and then we can go ahead and amplify that for later projects. I'm going to start just by grabbing the title MP4. Let's look at this title MP4 before we do anything with it. So we have other windows. We have a program window and a source window. The program window will be what timeline footage, when we create a sequence a little later, what is going to actually be in our final edit. But if we double click on a piece of footage, we are greeted with something called the source panel. The source panel, and I'm going to hit spacebar. The source panel essentially gives us a clip preview, and you can see this is a really cool clip. It's actually rather slow though, so I don't really need this end point of my clip. Though it's really neat, I may use that a little later. I want to end my clip roughly around, in this case, the 7-second mark. And there's an easy way to pre-edit your clips, and you can do this in the source panel, and that's with the in and the out markers. Now, in and out are actually these two little icons at the bottom. So in is the I key, and when you hit in, it's going to mark where the clip's in is. And then when you go to the end point, let's say roughly around that 7-second mark, right there, and I hit O, that's going to just bring in this chunk of clip. So a little later when we create a sequence, we can actually drop just that little chunk of clip in. It did not delete anything back here. It just basically said, hey, listen, we know you don't want this. And so this is why the source window is so important when you're editing. So now that I have that clip kind of trimmed, I'm going to grab the clip with my left mouse button, and I'm going to drag it upon this little, it looks like a sticky note or a little piece of notepad paper, and let go. That's going to create a timeline just with that clip. It looks like these windows didn't change, but in fact, now we're in the program window. And now that we have the program window, as you can see right here, we have our awesome clip. So we're ready to go. Now, what can we do with this clip? So this clip is put on something called a track. We have multiple tracks. If we ever wanted more tracks, we can right click and add a track, which is really nice. We can also do that with our audio tracks as well. This clip has no audio, therefore you only see one bar. We can trim a clip. So if we didn't trim it with the source window, we can click with our left mouse button and drag along the edge of the clip to trim. Any area where there's not a clip, you're going to notice that there's just going to be blank space. I'm going to hit Control or Command Z to undo that. In this particular case, I'm on my Move tool or my Selection tool, but I have a lot of other options that we can play with within this toolbar. Let's go to the next drop down. You're going to have Track Forward and Track Select, which are basically ways to move these tracks once you have more tracks in the scene, which we'll add in a little bit. We have different editing tools like the ripple and the rolling and the remix tool for audio. Those are kind of fun. We'll touch on those. We have our razor tool, which allows us to cut our clip and take away segments. If I cut and hit V to go back to my selection tool, I can remove an area. My favorite part is when we click in the blank space, it will let us select it and hit delete and trim those two together. I'll undo that. That's the razor tool. We also have slip tools, which again can move the tracks around, pen, rectangle, hand tool, and text tool. So for our first case, I want to speed this clip up just a little bit. I want to show you a fun little tool. It's going to be under the third category. I'm going to hold my left mouse button down and let go. And it's called the rate stretch tool. So if you grab that tool, and I love this little icon because you can see it has these little wavy arrows, I can take this and stretch it down. What's happening is it's actually speeding up the clip. So now, we can't really tell because we just briefly sped it up. We have a clip, so we can even speed that up more to about 200%. Now, eventually, when you start speeding things up, it's going to look sped up, but here we go. Awesome. So that's the rate stretch tool. That's really fun. That almost does what we like to call in the industry time remapping, which is a really nice way to kind of play with the speed. Also in our effect controls, when you select a clip, you can see there's a little time remapping button as well. But this just speeds up that rate of that clip. Now we have a fun starting point. Now that we have that particular clip, we can look through our other clips. If you don't want to use the source panel for this, we could switch to icon view or even freeform view and go into the footage and just highlight all of the different clips we have. I can highlight all of these. I can look through them, scrub. You can actually even do your in and out points. So I can hit I and O here, which is pretty wild. If I hit I and then I hit O, it creates a little in and out point, which is really cool. And when I drag that in and drop it on my track, I now have this fun clip. And you can see this is more of a handheld video camera. We're gonna play with that scaling just in a second. But overall, we now have a couple fun clips. So I'm gonna trim this. I'm gonna go back to my selection tool. I wanna just trim this clip to be very brief. We go from here to here, and we can always extend it. It's all non-destructive. And let's go ahead and scale that clip a little higher. To do that, I can click on my clip on track 1 here and find effect controls. If you don't see that, reset your Essentials workspace or go to Window, Effect Controls. I'm gonna go to Scale and I'm gonna scale this up. And it's okay if it's a little blurry, this is just a demo. But now we have a fun little transition. Very cool. The next step is I want to drop some of our elements in. Maybe we'll drop the deck twirl in and we'll shrink that up. We're doing a rough cut right now. Another way to scale your clips is just right click on the clip and then look for scale to frame size or set to frame size. That will make it a little bigger. I purposely have grabbed some clips of different sizes for you to kind of get acclimated here to this view. That's looking good. And then we have a couple of clips called opening. We have opening 1, which is a huge long clip of these two skaters. We'll end it there. Now here's a good thing. We could use our razor blade tool and cut right there. Hit V on our keyboard and delete. That's one way to do it. My favorite way is to use this blue line, the scrub bar or current time indicator. I like to hit Command K. That does the same thing. It cuts through the clips. Be careful though, because if you have audio, it will cut through those clips as well. And I don't really want to start with this blank spot. I want to really start with like here. So this is where these other tools can come into play. For instance, the ripple or the rolling. Now these are great, but I don't like to continually go down here to my options. I stay on my selection tool and I hold my control or command key down. Now, when I do that, I'm greeted with a bunch of cool options and icons on my tool. So you can see all of this red one or this yellow one. This yellow one is going to actually allow me to pull my clip up a little bit, but watch, it's not going to leave a gap. I'm holding my control, in my case, my command key and my left mouse button, and I'm going to let go. It's going to snap it back to the beginning, which is going to give me a really nice kind of transition. I can then take this clip and we can see where these guys are. We'll do the same thing. We'll hold we'll hold the controller or the command key and then the left mouse button, and we will just get right where those guys, maybe that camera was, maybe right there. And now we have a fun transition. I can then trim this clip just by holding my left mouse button down. We have our great transitions happening. Great. Next, we're going to go with these friends kind of skating down the element. We're going to keep this really short. Let's hit that Command K roughly a few seconds into the clip. So we go from clip 1 to clip 3 here, or clip 2 to clip 3. That's looking great. What else do we have? Let's end it with this clip at the end. Even though these are completely different people, we're going to end it roughly here. So again, Command K or Control K if you're on a PC. And I'm going to move this little slider here at the bottom to view all of my elements. And now we have our rough cut of our footage. Now I'd like you to go ahead and estimate with some of these timings and try to get the same pacing that I did. It's okay if it's not exactly perfect for this. The idea is we're just trying to build a little bit of visual storytelling here. All right, so a couple of things that you can see. One, I need to resize this clip. I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to set that to frame size. If that doesn't work, I can try scale to frame size. And if that still doesn't work, I can just pull out my clip and my scale. So I have multiple options to get this thing to work. The next step is I want to add a fade here at the end. I like the hard cuts between these clips. It really makes it fun, but maybe we want to add a fade here and a fade here. To do that, we're going to add transitions. To find your transitions, you're going to look for the effects panel, not the effect control, but the effects panel. You can find that in window effects. You're going to look for video transitions. You're going to go to dissolve and you're going to find a cross dissolve. You're going to drag it in your scene. One of the things that a lot of people are going to notice, and if I zoom in here, you'll see, is it only puts it on one side of the clip. I want it in between the clips. To do this, I'm going to select that area. I want to select this transition and I can make that transition bigger or smaller. But once I select it, those effects have effect controls. I'm going to set the alignment to center of cut. We have a nice look and we can even stretch this out just to make it a more dramatic fade. And maybe I want him to start the flip a little earlier. We'll use that good old control yellow handle key. And we'll have it kind of start right there. There we are. So we have that dissolved. We can do the same thing again. We can drag it in. If it doesn't center your clip for you, click on the little center, change it to center at cut, and then you can pull down the clip for you. And finally, if we want to dip to black, we can do that as well. That adds a clip. I'm just left clicking with all of this. In this case, maybe I want even not dip to black. Maybe I want to hit delete on that. Notice it just deletes the transitions. Maybe I want to fade to white or do a bloom, just because this is a black and white clip. There we are. And then maybe we want to do a dip to white in the beginning as well. And I'm just dragging that to change the length of the clip as I go. So now we have a really nice starting point. Things are looking pretty good. Awesome. Let's add a little bit of text on top of our title. Let's add the word skate. So how do we add text? It's actually really easy. In our Essentials panel, we have something called Essentials Graphics or Essential Graphics. Once you open Essential Graphics, you'll actually be greeted with a lot of free presets that you can use for things like titles or credits, you name it. I'm going to use the Edit key here. And this is a very blank screen. I totally understand that for beginners. It's probably a little jarring. But there's a little new layer key. So I'm going to hit new layer and we're going to just hit text. And that's going to give us a text layer, much like we would in our Photoshop. And I'm going to type skate. And I'm going to use some of these kind of sliders to get my element to work. So to do that, I'm going to go back to my move tool. And I'm going to kind of move this into the center. I do have these little icons that can kind of adjust for me. And we'll scale this really big. Put it into the center. Let's pick a different font, something that kind of feels a little more like our skate. For this, if you're following along in my class, you can go ahead and pick the font that you feel is appropriate. That's kind of your little customization element. So feel free to pick that. I could take this font and I could change the fill color. So I could make this red. I could use my drop down tool. I could make this black. It's really up to you. I kind of like that red though. It's kind of aggressive, but in a fun way. We're gonna make that red. I could add a stroke if I wanted to. I could add a background. The background will allow me to, again, have a little more visualization. I could even add a drop shadow. At this point, you can see I can even mask this and link it. The footage actually shows up within the text. If I want to scale this bigger than the number or the slider will allow me, I just click and drag that up and kind of put it here in the center. So we're going to start by having that fade in, and same thing, we're going to go back to our effects. We're going to just do a dissolve on the front of this. That's just going to let us fade in. And we're going to shrink this down because we want this to fade away roughly here. So we'll add another dissolve. Now, there are other ways that you can do this when it comes to fading or animating your text. I just showed you a very quick way because it's familiar for my beginners. But I can actually animate these as well. So if I select that graphic, all of these are animatable, meaning I can click on any of these icons, and one great example, and just to show you, is if I click on the toggle position icon and I start it off the screen, maybe I'll start it over here to kind of mirror that skateboard, and then I drag up a little bit, I can drag it onto the screen now, and as long as this button is pushed, it's going to animate that for me. Maybe once it comes off the screen, maybe we continue to kind of animate that, or we leave it where it is. So you can do some fun stuff with that panel. Once again, I'm okay if you don't have yours animated. You can keep it just stationary, but the idea is we just want to get a nice kind of baseline, so to speak, title happening. So that looks really, really cool. And I can move this track. I can move it above. I can put it on track 3 and leave track 2 empty for something else. So just know all of these, you can move them to various tracks or undo, and it works rather well. There's our skate logo. Looking good. Now, a lot of this footage is from different content creators. So what if I want to create a black and white appearance to this? So for that, I'm going to add something called an adjustment layer. I'm going to go back to project. I'm going to go back to my list view here. I'm going to select, I'm going to move my title in there, a new item adjustment layer. I'm going to make sure it's set to this footage. I'm going to drag it down, scale it up, and that adjustment layer is going to cover the whole track. Well, why is this important? Well, this allows us to apply color grading or color correction to all of the clips below. If I put it above this, it's going to apply color correction when I do this in a second to the title layer, but I want the title to be on top. I want to make all of this footage black and white to kind of match that last clip. So to do that, and I'll even show you, I don't even need to have that all the way out, but I'm going to click on the adjustment layer and find Lumitri color. In Lumitri color, I'm going to navigate to the basic corrections. I have creative corrections. I have ways that I can fade this film to make it a little more vintage. I have the ability to take my saturation down. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to up my shadows. I'm going to maybe pull up the white and black a little bit just to get it to kind of match that last clip. We have a pretty consistent color correction. Another really cool technique that you can use is you can actually match the clips together using something called match. So color wheels and match is a really fun one because you can go to comparison view. If you don't want to use an adjustment layer, but you want to kind of take this style and you want everything to look like this reference, I can now go to a clip like this and I can hit apply match, and it's going to go ahead and reference these clips, which is really, really nice. Now, we already did that with our adjustment layer, so if I take this away, you can see I've kind of done a good job. But that's something definitely to check out. We're not going to use it for this project. We're going to turn off comparison view. We're going to just use an adjustment layer, and we're going to go ahead and maybe use some of the creative film fade. That's really fun. Maybe we'll play with, again, the saturation a little bit. Really have fun with this. We'll blow out the light a little bit, and there we go. We have our really lovely sequence. All right, the final thing we need to do is add some voiceover and add some music. For this, I'm going to add my music clip first. So I'm going to drag that onto my scene. All right, now we've dropped that audio. Let's go ahead and listen. You're going to notice the audio is a lot longer than it should be, quite a bit actually. And there's a way around that. First, Adobe Premiere Pro tags it as music. As they tag that as music, we can actually go into our drop down, and right under the rate stretch clip that we did previously of the skateboard, we can go to the remix tool. And if I drag that remix tool down, it's going to actually analyze that clip using AI, edit the clip downward to fit our soundtrack. This is now how it's going to end. It's a really cool tool in which you can kind of adjust your clip a little bit. You can, narrow it down, and you're not doing a harsh cut anymore. I'm just clicking and dragging, and I usually find a place that gives me a little overhang. So it's always a happy little place there. If I did want to lower this clip's audio at this point, I could just use this toolbar. And if you kind of look very closely, there's a line. I could then take this line and hold my control or command key, and then I could just click on the line and drag it down. So that's another way we can fade it. The newest way is to take this little icon and pull it out and fade it. So once again, if I did trim that clip, I can control the fade just by pulling it out. So how cool is that? It auto tags this clip if I select it as a music track that allows me to either auto match the loudness, and it perfectly remixes this clip. It also has an option for ducking for audio. So let's say we wanted to add some voiceover clips. I have these clips, let's double click them.
I think there's a couple of elements to that. I always wanted to keep improving, and I didn't really care about my contest placing.
We have that one.
I just think this is the best time to be a skater. There are more facilities than ever.
And then the last one.
There are so many milestones. In terms of what changed the perception of skating and what changed...
What do we do with these? Well, let's take clip 3 and let's drag it to our timeline. Let's go ahead and listen, and immediately it tags it as audio or dialogue, which is great. And we're going to hear a little clashing of the sound. I'm going to move this clip. We're going to only be able to use one of these clips, but I'm going to move this clip here.
There are so many milestones. In terms of what changed the perception of skating and what changed the level of skating, there are so many bullet points there. Definitely the ollie.
Okay, so we want to kind of end our clip here, which is great. I can go ahead and just trim that clip down a little bit. Now I can adjust this. Maybe we're going to have this play a little bit after our...
There are so many miles.
So we're going to just nudge this over just a little bit. And we want the music to understand that the dialogue takes precedent. If I click on the music track, there's something called ducking. If I check that box for ducking and I hit generate keyframes, what's going to happen is it's going to lower the audio. We can make this a lot more sensitive. We could play with the ducking amount. I typically like to go in here.
Milestones.
And it lowers
in terms of what changed the perception of skating and what changed the level of skating.
There we go. So we're going to just use clip 3 on this one. And now that I have that, let's play with the voice. Let's enhance our voice. Enhancement is if you don't have a great audio mix or whatnot, you can make it sound like a podcast.
In terms of what changed...
So we could do it that way. I can also do a voice record right in here if I want to do a voiceover, which is kind of nice. I can auto match the loudness. That's really cool. I could set the EQ. So we could set this to a podcast type voice.
In terms of what changed the perception.
Now this voice, believe it or not, is, maybe you've already realized, is fully generated by AI, which is really amazing. So I went ahead and typed in some text and had AI generate a voice for me, and it turned into a really fun kind of experiment. And I do have the ability to kind of warm or thicken the voice or change the different style. Very cool. All of these options are massively awesome to get really like quick, amazing results when it comes to your dialogue. This previously you would have to do this in something like a Adobe Audition or any sort of audio mixer. Now we have the ability to start here in Adobe Premiere.
In terms of what changed,
So we're going to lower this audio here just a little bit,
the perception of
and we don't want to lower it too much.
skating and what changed the level. There are so many milestones. In terms of what changed the perception of skating.
I'm just moving up and down that line. A lot of this has been my left mouse button and my control button. How do we get this out of Premiere Pro? Well, that's never been easier. All we have to do to get this out of Premiere is we need to go to the very top and find this little square with the arrow that says Quick Export. Click on that, and then I'll hit the blue text and I'll rename this and I'll call it Skate. I'll make it a MP4 file and hit save. And then the big thing is you want to remember to hit the export button. In a matter of seconds, you just made your potentially very first Premiere Pro video. Premiere Pro, we've just grazed the surface, is a powerful tool that allows you to unlock your visual storytelling and your creativity. Today was just a follow along. Today you used footage that I've already given you, but I can't wait to see in your later classes what you can produce with this powerful tool. I want to see your stories. I want you to amplify your voice, literally and figuratively, and I can't wait to see what you create in Premiere Pro.